The rain fell heavily that evening, drumming on the tin roof of my childhood home, as if the heavens themselves were mourning my pain and disappointment. I stood silently outside the old wooden gates, my coat drenched and clinging to my body, yet I hardly noticed the cold or the wet. My mind was consumed by memories, sharp and relentless, of a life that had been anything but kind to me. I thought about my parents, who had loved me in their own way, yet had never truly understood me, always comparing me to my cousin Armand, always praising his every accomplishment while my own efforts went unnoticed and dismissed. I remembered the countless nights I had stayed up studying, poring over my books, hoping that someday someone would see my dedication, that the long hours of work and silent suffering would be acknowledged. And yet each morning, their words cut through my heart like knives, calling me lazy, weak, and unworthy. Even my closest friends, who I had confided in with every secret and hope, had turned their backs, influenced by Armand's cruel gossip and whispers that painted me as arrogant, ungrateful, and selfish, when in reality, all I had wanted was to be loved and recognized for who I truly was. I could still hear the laughter echoing through the halls, the sneering voices that belittled my accomplishments and mocked my dreams, telling me I was nothing, that I would never amount to anything. And for the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of rejection pressing down on my chest, threatening to crush me beneath its invisible hands. My heart ached as I recalled the day the scholarship I had earned through countless sleepless nights and sacrifices was given to Armand, simply because he seemed more promising in the eyes of everyone who mattered, as if my hard work and perseverance were meaningless, as if I had never existed. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from the people I trusted most, the ones who were supposed to protect me and nurture my dreams, yet had chosen favoritism, convenience, and their own misguided judgments over fairness and love. I remembered the small incidents too, the way my parents would laugh at his jokes while ignoring my laughter, how neighbors and relatives would compliment him for trivial things while overlooking my genuine achievements, and how my own sense of self began to crumble under the constant pressure of being invisible, unworthy, and unloved. I had been a bright, hopeful child once, full of dreams and determination, but each act of betrayal, each whispered insult and dismissive glance, chipped away at my spirit until only a hollow shell of fear and anger remained, and yet even in that darkness, a small flame of resolve flickered, refusing to be extinguished. I could not forget the cruel smirks of those who claimed to be my friends, the way they would turn their faces when I approached, whispering behind my back about my supposed failures, about how I was overambitious or undeserving, and how my dreams were unrealistic and foolish. Every lie Armand had spread about me, every fabricated story that painted me as inferior or ungrateful, gnawed at my sense of self-worth, yet at the same time, it ignited something within me, a determination to prove them wrong, not through anger or malice, but through unwavering perseverance and transformation. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating, and yet as I stood in the rain, feeling each droplet mix with my silent tears, I realized that I could no longer allow their judgments, their favoritism, or their ridicule to define me. I had to leave, to escape the confines of the home and the village that had grown toxic with their prejudice, to step into a world where my worth would be determined not by comparisons or gossip, but by my own actions, my own achievements, and my own resilience. With every step away from the familiar paths of my childhood, I felt a mixture of sorrow and relief, knowing that leaving meant abandoning not only a home but also the people who had wounded me the most, yet understanding that survival and self-respect demanded this painful choice. The journey ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, yet the pain of rejection and betrayal had sharpened my resolve like a blade, readying me for battles I would have to face alone, without the crutch of family approval or societal validation. I clung to the small hope that one day, they would realize the depth of their mistake, that the girl they had dismissed and ridiculed would return not as someone broken, but as someone powerful, accomplished, and undeniable, a living testament to the consequences of underestimation. I reflected on every humiliation I had endured, the times teachers had ignored my questions, the moments peers had laughed at my ideas, the days I had been passed over for recognition, all of it building a silent promise within me, to rise above, to transform my pain into strength, and to ensure that the voices that once mocked me would one day tremble in the presence of my success. And so, as the rain continued to fall, drenching me and washing away the remnants of the timid girl I once was, I made a vow to myself that my life would no longer be dictated by the cruelty, ignorance, or favoritism of others, that I would carve my own path, forge my own identity, and emerge from the shadows of betrayal as someone they could never ignore again. I knew that the road ahead would demand sacrifice, determination, and patience, yet the bitterness I carried was now tempered with purpose, transforming my sorrow into a quiet, burning fire that would fuel every decision, every action, every moment of my journey. I would not seek revenge through hatred, but through excellence, through proof that they had underestimated me, through showing them that the girl they thought was nothing had become everything they could never imagine. Even as I turned my back on the home that had nurtured me in comfort but failed me in love, I felt a surge of strength rising within me, a certainty that no mockery, no dismissal, and no betrayal could ever diminish the woman I was destined to become. The echoes of past laughter and scorn followed me, but they no longer held power. They were reminders of the fire I now carried, a fire that would forge my future, illuminate my path, and one day, return to confront the world that had doubted me. Leaving the village behind was both terrifying and liberating as I stepped onto the crowded streets of the city, a place that promised anonymity but demanded resilience, and I quickly realized that survival here would require every ounce of strength I had cultivated through years of pain and betrayal. I had nothing with me but a small suitcase, a few savings painstakingly accumulated from odd jobs during my last months in the village, and the fierce determination that had taken root in my heart after being cast aside by everyone I had once trusted. And yet even with these meager resources, I felt a spark of hope igniting within me, whispering that this was my chance to reinvent myself, to rise above the scars of my past, and to claim a life defined not by the opinions of others, but by my own choices and capabilities. The first days were brutal, filled with uncertainty, rejection, and moments of crushing loneliness as I wandered from job to job, from menial tasks that paid little to opportunities that seemed promising but fell through due to inexperience or lack of connections, and each failure pressed heavily against my spirit, threatening to convince me that the world outside my village was just as cruel and unforgiving as the one I had left behind. Nights were the hardest, when the small, dimly lit room I rented in a building that smelled of dampness and decay seemed to close in on me, and I would lie awake listening to the distant sounds of the city, the honking of cars, the laughter of strangers, and feel an aching emptiness where my family, my home, and my old friends should have been. Yet even in the midst of despair, I refused to succumb, reminding myself of the vows I had made beneath the rain-soaked skies of my childhood, that I would not allow the cruelty of others to define my destiny, and that each struggle, no matter how painful, was a step closer to the life I deserved. Slowly, I began to find footing, taking jobs that allowed me to learn, to grow, and to understand the intricacies of the world I had entered, from cleaning offices to assisting small businesses, from working in cafes to helping entrepreneurs organize their paperwork, and in every task, no matter how small or menial, I observed keenly, absorbed knowledge like a sponge, and honed skills that would later become the foundation of my empire, all while keeping my face calm and my mind sharp, never allowing anyone to see the storm of ambition brewing quietly beneath my exterior. Along the way, I encountered people who saw what the world had failed to recognize in me, mentors who offered guidance, encouragement, and opportunities that I had once only dreamed of, and with their support, I began building not just a career, but a vision, a path that would one day lead me to the success that my past had denied me, and with each small victory, a completed project, a satisfied client, a small amount of recognition, I felt the embers of confidence rekindle within me, growing steadily into a flame that refused to be extinguished by setbacks or the memories of betrayal that haunted my thoughts. There were moments of doubt, of course, nights when exhaustion and loneliness pressed down like a suffocating weight, and when I would question whether my sacrifices and efforts were worth it. Yet every time I remembered the faces of those who had doubted me, who had ridiculed my dreams, who had preferred Armand over me, I felt a surge of determination rise. A quiet but unyielding resolve that whispered that my success would be my sweetest revenge, a proof so undeniable that no word, no laughter, no insult could ever diminish it. As the months turned into years, my small beginnings transformed into a growing enterprise, humble at first, barely enough to cover expenses, yet steady and resilient, and through meticulous planning, endless hard work, and relentless perseverance, I watched my vision take shape, expanding beyond what I had initially imagined, and realizing that every rejection, every insult, every closed door had been a lesson, a preparation for the larger battles and victories that awaited me. I became disciplined in every aspect of my life, managing finances, studying market trends, learning negotiation, mastering communication, and refining not only my professional skills but also my character, understanding that true power came from knowledge, patience, and the ability to endure hardship without losing hope or compassion. And I held tightly to the principle that revenge was not in destroying others, but in proving that the girl they dismissed could rise above every limitation imposed upon her, transforming pain into resilience and bitterness into ambition. The transformation was gradual, almost imperceptible at first, but undeniable over time, as the shy, overlooked girl who had left the village became a confident, competent, and respected woman, someone whose presence commanded attention, whose ideas were valued, and whose achievements could not be ignored, and with every success, I felt the silent satisfaction of watching my dreams manifest, knowing that the seeds I had planted with sweat, tears, and sleepless nights were blossoming into a life far richer and more fulfilling than anything I had dared imagine in my darkest days. Yet, even in the midst of triumph, I remained grounded, aware of the fragility of progress and the fickleness of fortune, and I never allowed complacency to seep into my mind, because the lessons of betrayal had taught me that nothing could be taken for granted, and that true strength lay in continuous growth, unwavering focus, and the courage to rise each time life knocked me down. I also began to realize the importance of building relationships not out of necessity, but out of genuine trust and respect, seeking out those who shared my values, who believed in integrity, hard work, and perseverance, and surrounding myself with people who would challenge me, inspire me, and uplift me, for I understood that success was never truly solitary, and that collaboration, mentorship, and community were the pillars that could sustain my ambitions in the long term. Slowly but surely, the city began to feel like a home, not in the warmth of familiar faces, but in the knowledge that this was the space where I could become whoever I wanted, free from the shadows of judgment, favoritism, and ridicule, and in that freedom, I discovered a new identity, one defined not by what I had lost or endured, but by the strength, vision, and resilience I had cultivated within myself, a woman who was unrecognizable to those who had dismissed her, yet entirely authentic to the person I had always hoped to be. Every obstacle I faced, every closed opportunity, every whispered doubt from strangers, became a stepping stone, a lesson, a test of my patience and persistence, and I learned to navigate challenges with strategy, grace, and unwavering determination, knowing that each moment of struggle was shaping me into a force that could not be ignored, and that the very hardships that once threatened to break me were now forging the character, skills, and resolve that would one day make me unstoppable. Through all of this, the fire of revenge burned quietly in my heart, not as hatred, but as motivation, a reminder that the people who had underestimated me, who had laughed at my dreams, who had chosen Armand over me, would one day witness the transformation they had never believed possible, and that their disbelief and regret would be met not with malice, but with the undeniable evidence of my success, influence, and grace. I invested myself in learning everything I could, absorbing knowledge from books, mentors, experiences, and failures, understanding that intelligence and skill were far more powerful than anger, that true revenge was built through excellence, and that no scorn, no insult, no act of favoritism could match the impact of a life rebuilt with vision, effort, and integrity. Slowly, the once timid, rejected, and overlooked girl evolved into a confident, intelligent, and capable woman, someone whose presence commanded attention, whose skills inspired respect, and whose accomplishments would one day leave those who had dismissed her in stunned silence, unable to deny the force she had become. And through this, I realized that the essence of revenge was not in tearing others down, but in rising so high that their disbelief and mockery became inconsequential, and that my story, forged from betrayal, hardship, and unwavering determination, would become a testament to resilience, transformation, and triumph. And so, as I looked out over the city skyline from my small office window in the late evening, feeling the wind on my face and the weight of years of struggle behind me, I understood that I had crossed the threshold, that the girl who had left the village had been reborn through perseverance, sacrifice, and unrelenting effort, and that the stage was now set for the next chapter of my life, where the ultimate vindication would not be spoken in words, but seen in the undeniable reality of the woman I had become, a reality that no one, not even those who had betrayed me, could ever ignore. Returning to the village after years of relentless struggle and tireless effort was a moment that carried the weight of every tear, every sleepless night, every humiliation I had endured. And yet as I stepped off the bus onto the familiar, dusty streets, a strange mixture of nostalgia and determination surged through me, reminding me of the shy, overlooked girl I had once been and contrasting sharply with the confident, accomplished woman I had become, a woman who carried within her the quiet, undeniable power of transformation. I walked slowly, observing the houses that had once felt like prisons of judgment, the narrow lanes that had witnessed whispers and laughter at my expense, and I could not help but notice how much had changed. Yet how many attitudes had remained the same people who had once dismissed me still inhabiting the same spaces, unaware that the girl they had ridiculed was returning not as someone fragile, but as someone they could no longer ignore. My heart pounded as I approached the main square where the village often gathered for events, and I could feel the curious, cautious glances of those who remembered me, some eyes widening in disbelief, some narrowing in suspicion, as they tried to reconcile the memory of the timid, invisible girl with the confident, poised woman standing before them, and in that moment, I understood that my return was not simply a homecoming, but a reckoning, an unspoken announcement that the underestimated had risen. The first person I saw was my father, who had aged yet carried the same pride and stubbornness that had shaped my childhood, and as our eyes met, I detected a flicker of guilt mixed with astonishment, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps they had not realized the depth of their favoritism or the cost of their dismissiveness, and I held myself tall, smiling gently, conveying neither anger nor bitterness, but a calm confidence that spoke volumes about the journey I had endured. Armand, now older and with a swagger that had once been charming but now seemed forced, noticed me almost immediately, and the recognition in his eyes was followed by a brief flicker of discomfort, as if he suddenly realized that the girl he had mocked and belittled was no longer vulnerable, no longer powerless, and that any attempt to maintain superiority in my presence would be futile. The village community, accustomed to hearing tales of my supposed failures and Armand's celebrated successes, watched as I casually mentioned my achievements, the businesses I had built, the mentorships I had undertaken, and the influence I had earned, and I could feel the shifting atmosphere, the subtle yet unmistakable awe that replaced the old dismissive glances. As if the air itself recognized the undeniable transformation I had undergone, invitations to speak, previously unimaginable, were offered by those who once ignored me, and as I addressed the gathering, sharing lessons on entrepreneurship, resilience, and perseverance, the applause that followed was louder, heartfelt, and sincere, resonating in a way that both humbled me and affirmed the power of the journey I had undertaken, and I realized in that moment that my revenge did not require cruelty or humiliation, but existed naturally through the undeniable evidence of my success, grace, and unshakable confidence. I made deliberate choices to uplift the community, to provide scholarships for struggling students, to offer guidance to young women who reminded me of the girl I once was, and to fund projects that brought growth and opportunity, and each act of kindness, though rooted in generosity, also carried a quiet, poetic revenge, a living proof that the person they had underestimated could effect change, inspire hope, and command respect in ways they could never achieve through mockery or favoritism. Armand approached me later, attempting casual conversation, his voice tinged with uncertainty, and I could detect his internal struggle as he tried to reconcile his memories of the girl he had mocked with the woman he now faced, and I smiled gently, responding with calm composure, conveying neither prideful triumph nor harsh scorn, but a poised dignity that magnified the contrast between the girl they had dismissed and the woman I had become, a contrast that would resonate in his mind for a long time. My parents, too, observed quietly from the sidelines, their expressions a mixture of pride, guilt, and astonishment, and I could see the unspoken apology in their eyes, a recognition of past mistakes and the unfairness I had endured, yet I held forgiveness in my heart, not because they had earned it fully, but because I no longer wished to be chained to bitterness, understanding that true liberation came from releasing the weight of resentment and allowing my own success to shine without the burden of anger. Conversations and interactions with villagers were now guided by respect rather than dismissal, and each time someone addressed me with deference, complimented my accomplishments, or sought advice, I felt a profound satisfaction that was sweeter than any act of revenge could be, for it was a confirmation that the person I had fought to become was now recognized, valued, and admired, a reality my detractors could not ignore, no matter how they tried. I observed Armand carefully over the days that followed, noting his discomfort when my initiatives received praise, when young entrepreneurs sought my guidance, and when community leaders acknowledged my contributions, and I understood that the power of my journey lay not in shaming him, but in allowing him to witness the transformation firsthand, to feel the subtle sting of underestimation turned into undeniable reality, and to confront the truth that mocking and dismissing others often plants the seeds of their eventual rise above you. My speeches were laced with personal insight, subtly narrating lessons of perseverance and self-belief, yet without revealing the personal betrayal that had shaped me, and each time I spoke, eyes widened in admiration and curiosity, some whispering among themselves, trying to piece together the story of the girl they had ignored and the woman they now revered, and I relished the quiet, unspoken acknowledgement that I had become the answer to every doubt cast upon me. Every philanthropic effort, every success celebrated publicly, was a statement not of arrogance, but of quiet power, a demonstration that the greatest revenge was lived experience, and that the life I had built from scratch, through hardship, determination, and skill, spoke more eloquently than words ever could. I allowed myself moments of reflection, recalling the years of struggle, the nights in dimly lit rooms, the endless work, the self-doubt and despair, and I realized that those challenges had forged resilience, character, and wisdom, qualities that no ridicule or betrayal could ever diminish, and that the true measure of my victory was not in making others feel small, but in standing taller, stronger, and wiser than I had ever imagined possible. Each interaction with the villagers, each compliment, each nod of respect, served as validation of my journey, and I could sense that the whispers of disbelief were turning into conversations of admiration and inspiration, a reversal so profound that it reinforced my belief that transformation fueled by patience, hard work, and grace was the most satisfying form of revenge. I also took care to engage with those who had once been friends, teaching them that loyalty and support mattered more than gossip, and demonstrating that true connection was built on trust, respect, and encouragement, rather than envy, favoritism, or cruelty, and I could see the realization dawning on them, slowly reshaping relationships that had once been fractured. My return became a catalyst for positive change in the village, inspiring others to pursue their dreams, to challenge doubt, and to rise above societal limitations, and with every success celebrated, every life impacted, I felt the quiet triumph of the girl I once was, now fully realized as a woman whose journey was as powerful as it was inspiring, and whose revenge was not measured in humiliation, but in influence, transformation, and undeniable excellence. By the end of my stay, the village no longer saw me as the girl they had dismissed, but as a symbol of determination, a beacon of hope, and a living proof that underestimation could never contain ambition, that betrayal could not suppress growth, and that the sweetest revenge was the one lived fully, generously, and unapologetically, in a life rebuilt stronger, wiser, and more magnificent than anyone could have imagined. And as I left the village once again, this time with gratitude, recognition, and the respect I had earned through years of struggle and perseverance, I understood that my journey was complete not because I had destroyed my detractors, but because I had transformed myself, and in doing so, created a legacy that would forever remind them that the girl they once thought was nothing had become everything, unstoppable, unshakable, and undeniable. The day I returned to the village for the final time was filled with a sense of quiet triumph, a mixture of nostalgia, pride, and anticipation, as I walked through familiar streets that had once been silent witnesses to my humiliation, betrayal, and despair, and now felt alive with the possibility of reconciliation, recognition, and redemption, knowing that the girl who had been cast aside had risen not only through resilience and hard work, but also through patience, wisdom, and unwavering determination, and that the life I had built was proof of what perseverance could accomplish. I noticed the changes immediately, not just in the village's physical appearance, but in the subtle shifts of demeanor and tone of those I passed, the way neighbors, some of whom had once whispered cruel remarks or overlooked my presence, now regarded me with cautious respect, curiosity, and admiration, as if silently acknowledging the journey I had undertaken. And I understood that my reputation had preceded me, that my efforts, achievements, and generosity had become the narrative through which people would now measure my worth, a story that contrasted sharply with the ridicule and doubt I had endured in the past. My parents were waiting near the main square, their expressions a blend of astonishment, pride, and remorse, and I could feel the weight of years of unresolved pain in the way they hesitated before approaching me, their eyes reflecting memories of favoritism, neglect, and ignorance that had shaped my childhood. Yet I walked toward them calmly, greeting them with warmth tempered by strength, understanding that forgiveness was not only a gift to them but a liberation for myself, allowing me to release the bitterness I had carried for so long and to finally embrace the peace that comes from triumph over injustice. I watched as Armand, who had once mocked me, dismissed my efforts, and tried to undermine my confidence, struggled to conceal the conflict within him, his eyes darting between admiration, disbelief, and shame, as he confronted the reality that the girl he had scorned had become a woman of influence, respect, and undeniable power. And I understood that the most profound revenge was not humiliation or confrontation, but rather the quiet, unwavering evidence of transformation, achievement, and self-respect that left no room for denial, excuses, or arrogance. I walked through the village, visiting families who had once judged me harshly or believed Armand's lies, offering assistance, scholarships, and guidance to those in need, and in doing so, I realized that my revenge was not rooted in malice, but in empowerment, generosity, and the demonstration that overcoming betrayal and adversity with integrity and compassion could inspire admiration, change hearts, and leave a lasting, positive impact that far exceeded any fleeting satisfaction derived from anger or retaliation. Each conversation I had, each gesture of kindness, and each acknowledgement of my achievements served as a reminder to the villagers, my family, and to myself, that true power lay not in vengeance or cruelty, but in the ability to rise above hurt, to transform pain into strength, and to use one's experience to uplift others. And as I observed Armand silently watching my interactions, I understood that his discomfort, hesitation, and eventual reflection were natural consequences of underestimating me, and that the lessons he needed to learn would not come from words, but from witnessing my grace, resilience, and undeniable accomplishments firsthand. My parents approached me with humility, admitting past mistakes, favoritism, and ignorance of my suffering, and I listened quietly, feeling the sting of years lost but also a sense of relief that they had finally recognized their errors, and I forgave them fully, not because they had earned forgiveness completely, but because I no longer wished to carry resentment as a burden, realizing that true strength and peace came from letting go of anger, embracing my achievements, and choosing compassion over bitterness. I also engaged Armand in conversation, gently but firmly highlighting the importance of humility, respect, and the consequences of underestimating others, not to humiliate him, but to encourage reflection, growth, and the understanding that arrogance and cruelty only stunt one's own progress, and in doing so, I offered him an opportunity to learn from my journey, to recognize the value of perseverance, integrity, and resilience, and to witness the rewards of a life rebuilt through effort, vision, and unwavering determination. As the days passed, I noticed the subtle shifts in the community, the way people began to emulate my example, encouraging young girls and boys to pursue education, work hard, and rise above limitations imposed by family, society, or circumstance, and I felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that my life had become more than just personal vindication. It had become a legacy of inspiration, empowerment, and hope for others who had faced neglect, favoritism, or ridicule. Each success I shared, whether through establishing scholarships, mentoring, or simply offering guidance, served as a living testament to the journey from pain to triumph, a reminder that even those who are overlooked, underestimated, or betrayed can rise above adversity with determination, discipline, and grace, and that the greatest revenge is not destruction but transformation, leaving a lasting impact that resonates far beyond personal vindication. I reflected on the years of struggle, the lonely nights, the endless work, the moments of despair, and the persistent hope that refused to be extinguished, and I realized that every tear, every obstacle, every rejection had shaped me into someone capable, compassionate, and strong, a woman whose success was not merely a measure of wealth or status, but of resilience, intelligence, and moral strength, and that this transformation was the most satisfying proof that the girl they had dismissed was now someone truly unstoppable. In my quiet moments of reflection, I also considered how my journey could inspire others to forgive, to rise above hurt, and to focus on self-improvement rather than revenge, understanding that empowerment and achievement were far more impactful than anger, resentment, or malice, and that my life had become a narrative of hope, perseverance, and triumph that others could follow to overcome their own hardships. My actions, my words, and my presence now served as a living example that betrayal, favoritism, and humiliation do not define destiny, and that the capacity to rise above them with grace, integrity, and determination is a form of power and revenge that no one can take away. The villagers, my family, and even Armand gradually came to understand the truth of my journey, that my success was earned through diligence, resilience, and intelligence, and that it stood as proof that the mistakes, misjudgments, and betrayals of the past could not prevent growth, influence, and respect, and that the girl they had underestimated had evolved into a woman whose life spoke louder than words, commands respect, and leaves a legacy of inspiration. By the time I prepared to leave the village for the final time, I felt an overwhelming sense of completion, of purpose fulfilled, knowing that I had not only claimed my own dignity, respect, and success, but had also offered opportunities, guidance, and hope to those who needed it, demonstrating that the sweetest form of revenge lies not in humiliation or punishment, but in becoming a force of transformation, inspiration, and undeniable achievement that changes hearts, influences minds, and uplifts entire communities. And as I walked away from the village for the last time, my heart full of peace, pride, and quiet joy, I understood that my story, the journey from betrayal, pain, and underestimation to empowerment, respect, and triumph, would endure, a living reminder that those who once thought I was nothing had been wrong, and that the girl who had endured heartbreak and rejection had emerged as a woman unstoppable, resilient, and undeniably extraordinary, leaving behind a legacy that would inspire Generations and stand as proof that the ultimate revenge is a life well lived, full of grace, strength, and success.